Welcome, Matthias, and for everyone joining us, Matthias Hens is co-founder and CEO of Jimdo. I'm really excited to be talking to you today from the perspective of how smaller enterprises have such a big impact in the world. And I know we're going to talk about a whole number of things, but just for orientation, I would love it if you would tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about Jimdo, because that will set up our whole conversation.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. And yes, I'm Matthias, and I'm one of the founders of the company. And my view is basically that entrepreneurship is a great thing to have an impact on the world. And I believe that basically every company in the world hopefully views it that way to create a positive impact. And for my co-founders and I, it was actually wanting to focus on the micro businesses, because for us, like, they're a really, really great segment. And basically we're talking about amazing people behind these businesses that just don't get the attention also from the tech side. So what we did is we created a website builder and now also other products like logo creator or online store builder for them to really make it as easy as possible that they could take the opportunities that basically the web offers to them.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've got some fun stories about how you guys got together and set up, including Life on the Farm. So tell me a little bit about how you hothoused the idea and then created this incredible sense of purpose between you.
Yeah, well, my two co-founders, they basically started their first company when they were 16. And I joined them when they were 20. I was just out of university when I was like 25. And then basically they started out with web design, and they had this amazing idea of actually empowering people that they could update and create their websites basically on the web on the fly without having any designer. And this was back in 2003, so very, very new. And then they asked me to join. And what we did is kind of like we all moved into this great old farmhouse where my co-founder Fritjof lived at that time together with his mother, and then basically worked from there. And we started out there, just brought our computers and started, they coded, I started thinking about the business a little bit more, and thus basically got going. And we really grouped together because, when you basically live together for a year and then kind of like build something together, that was just an amazing start for the three of us.
I love that story. So if Silicon Valley has their garage startup, you had the farm version of that together. And I thought it was just important to understand a little bit about that, because I'd love you to talk about how you relate to your customers. You've been doing what you do for a while now. Clearly, it has an awful lot of meaning for it. And having had a few conversations with you now, I know that's because of how you relate to the customers that you have in a very personal sense. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of like what actually happened, right? We were a very small company when we started out. It was just the three of us, and we were focusing on these small businesses, trying to creating websites for them and trying to help them to get successful on the web. And there was just this amazing atmosphere between them and us. And it was like we were kind of like one, right? And we got to know amazing people that were our clients, but that also supported us. And that's just kind of like how these people act and how they are, right? And if you put this kind of like on a bigger picture, it's like it's a huge sector. It's like in the European Union, we have around 22 million micro businesses, which is like business with less than 10 employees. So it's a really big market. And if you think about it, there's nobody really that gives them a ton of attention, not politics, not really like companies. So they are a little bit left out. And I feel there's so much more in the segment that we could help elevate. And, we're trying to do our part with Jimdo on this.
And the pandemic has had such an impact, hasn't it, on all of us, but especially on those smaller businesses where perhaps the support has not been so readily available. Tell me a little bit about the experiences that you've had with the businesses that you're so close to going through this particular period of time.
Yeah, it was a super interesting time, and we understood fairly early on that our segment, like the micro businesses, would potentially be hit very, very hard. So, and then kind of like we reached out to a ton of customers and wanted to talk to them, because it was really important for us and also to me personally to understand how they're doing and what they're going through. And it was just amazing to hear these stories, right? And I think the emotional connection between between them and us just grew, because it was like they had to go through such an incredible tough time, kind of like going through this uncertainty, and some people really being left out with their business, and understanding how they adapt and trying to make the best out of it without any kind of whining, but really just, being an entrepreneur and trying to act and trying to influence what's in your control was just absolutely amazing to see. And we obviously try to support as much as possible. And I can give you like a story from a bakery from southern Germany. They didn't know what would happen, and they created an online store overnight where they uploaded all their rolls and breads, and you could basically order until 10 p.m. at night, pay via PayPal, and they delivered like the stuff to your doorstep at 8:30 in the morning, right? And I thought it was just a crazy, innovative, great idea and a good service, right? And then what happened, kind of like when the summer, like the lockdown, was lifted, they saw that the numbers decreased, but they also recognized that the old people would still kind of like use its service because they were afraid to go out and expose them to the risk of the virus. And what they did they do? They just continued to do it because they wanted to continue to serve the community, right? And this is how the people act. And it's not a one-off story. These are many, many stories that we heard. And if you see how they act, right, and how you understand how we understand that we can support them with our products and have an impact, it was pretty amazing to go through that together with them. That's what it really felt like.
I've been really taken with your approach in terms of how much time you spend with these entrepreneurs and these micro businesses, and refresh my memory as to how much time you actually spend literally just listening and talking.
It's usually I do a kind of like 2 customer interviews or conversations per week. So it's like at least I would say 2 hours per week. And the interesting thing, right, is like every time I go into this or I leave this conversation on a higher energy level, just because the connection is there. And it's like every time I get to know another amazing story of a person who is actively taken responsible for their business, for what they're doing, and learning about how they approach it, right? And it's every time I think like it's really amazing and such a big motivation for me to just keep going and continue really to try to elevate them and unleash their power going forward.
And having spent so much time with all of these businesses, I'd love if you could share a few learnings or tips. There's so many. Everyone has the ability to be an entrepreneur and a micro business if they choose to. So tell us what we should be doing if we're that way inclined.
Well, the first thing is kind of like really actively decide for that you want to do, right? And then just be in it with like your heart and soul. And this is like what I am always like absolutely inspired by talking to these people, right? They are in it with their heart and soul. And the major customer group of ours are non-scalable business. So basically, they're not kind of like the tech companies that raise a ton of funding. It's more kind of like the physiotherapist or the bakery or, a lawyer or a doctor whatsoever. And these people, like they really take that decision going forward and are in it with everything that they have. And another thing that they really do is that they cherish the human connection and try just to basically live it, right? And to do what's really important for them and to serve their customers really well. And I think if you've really understood that, I think like that's already a very, very good starting point.
You're clearly practicing what you preach, which is what we all strive for. On a kind of broader level, is there anything that is driving you in particular that you share with the TEDx community?
I'm kind of like going back to my initial statement that I think like it's, entrepreneurship for me is really like a great method of basically trying to create impact. And because kind of like you can self-finance it, you can act what's within your control. It's very different, for example, politics. And I think like, there are so many problems in the world, or also so many opportunities that I think actually there are great solutions that we could solve with entrepreneurship. And I would just kind of like motivate everyone and really think about what kind of capabilities do I really have, right? And then kind of like, what can I actually create out of this? And could this actually be a business? And really take it into consideration, because as you say, everyone these days can be an entrepreneur. There's a ton of knowledge out there. There's a ton of support out there. And quite frankly, there's also quite a bit of money out there looking for great opportunities. And for example, when I think about just the climate crisis that we are facing, right? I think like there are are a lot of great minds out there that, you know, if they shift their attention to this, I'm sure they're going to come up with great solutions that will help us going forward. It's not going to solve everything, but I think like it is something that we as individuals can really take up and contribute. And for me, for example, it is really kind of like elevating these micro businesses.
And just to finish, I wanted to bring things back to on a more personal note. You know, these things take energy, don't they? They take not just the time and the sense of purpose, but they take a lot of energy. So tell me, where does your energy come from, aside from talking to the customers that you have, that you relate to so strongly?
It is actually like connected to those conversations, because I learned kind of like how we can influence or impact these people's lives, right? And when I heard, for example, the bakery story, it was so rewarding talking to that baker and telling him kind of like how we were a small part in this journey, enabling to offer that service to these people, right? And they like, because I think like they understand kind of like we're in it with our heart, and we really want to support them, and we're giving everything that we have in our power to do that. I feel like they see it a little bit and they play it back and they reflect it. And I don't think there are many opportunities in a professional career where you really have the possibility to impact people's lives. So for me, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that I'm just super excited and also super motivated to continue to build, even, you know, after having run this business for 14 years now. I'm really, really looking forward.
Listen, it's been wonderful talking to you, Matthias. So thank you so much for your time today. And I shall look forward to seeing much more entrepreneurialism into the future.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great pleasure.